Hello and welcome to the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. I'm Josh Roller and I'm joined as always by Rob Peeters. We both thank you for tuning in this week and hope you enjoy. This weekend was qualifying for the Indianapolis 500. I'll share some major points of that in just a moment. Then we had Austin, Texas at Circuit of the Americas. NASCAR debuted there for the very first time. Mother Nature was a bit of a pain, to put it nicely. I'll be diplomatic about that, but it was a pain. The truck race was wet, the Xfinity race was dry, and the Cup race was very wet. Then let's not forget Monaco is this weekend, and just speaking for myself, it felt so weird, and the start of the race was weird as well. You know, just the timing of it, the position of the sun, and just like, this just doesn't feel like Monaco at all. I was just so confused about that, but thank you, FIA, for scheduling like that. We'll discuss that race as well as we'll have an upshift, downshift question related to it as well, so spoiler alert there. But for now, let's get this show running with Roller's Racing Report, because Rob, you're going to have a special segment later for us about the Indy 500 once again. I'm excited to hear. I know what you're going to talk about. I don't know what you're going to say, but I'm excited to hear it. So, Roller's Racing Report right here. Let's go. Formula One, we got 1 point of news here. Lando Norris has signed a multi-year extension with McLaren and will now be with the team through 2023. On a side note, I don't think a 2-year extension constitutes as a multi-year agreement. It's just a 2-year extension, even though it technically is a multi-year agreement. I think multi-year has to be 3 or more. Rob, am I crazy for saying that?
I don't think you're crazy. I think we're nitpicking, but I don't think you're crazy.
Okay. I accept that. All right, like I said, that was only Formula 1 point here. We'll touch on a couple other things later in the show. IndyCar. NTT has extended its IndyCar Series entitlement sponsor with a new multi-year deal, so that's good as well to hear that they have more years secured there, and that's something they don't have to worry about like they did with iZod before and Verizon before, so that's good. Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, their 3 teams were penalized 30 minutes each on Friday.
This one was crazy.
Yeah, following a photo stunt incident during Thursday's practice, the incident nearly caused a very nasty collision between Colton Herta and Scott McLaughlin. Herta made slight contact with the outside wall and with McLaughlin's car. It could have been far much worse, and it was very scary to watch that. I didn't even realize until like the day later what had actually caused that, and I was just like, why are these cars going so slow? Why didn't Herta get the message? But I'm like, okay, well, that could have been very, very nasty for sure. I don't know if 30 minutes of practice penalty was enough, but that's I guess up for another debate.
Well, they didn't qualify as well as they practiced, so I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that has something to do with it. And if that was the case, I guess punishment fits the crime there, I guess. Scott Dixon, here's the qualifying results. Scott Dixon will lead the 33-car Indianapolis 500 field to green with a 4-lap speed average of 231.685 miles per hour. Colton Herta and Rinus VeeKay will join him on the front row. Row 2 will be Ed Carpenter, Tony Kanaan, and Alex Palou. And then on row 3 will be Ryan Hunter-Reay, Elio Castro-Neves, and Marcus Ericsson. Those guys were on the Fast 9. Team Penske missed the Fast 9 entirely for the second straight year and nearly had Will Power miss the 500. That was quite a nail-biting moment just for everyone there, just to think that this guy who's won a championship, won a 500 before, is nearly beat in polls in recent years, could have missed the 500. So, and then you had Paretta Motorsports, they almost missed the 500 as well, but he was in the last row shooter along with Simone de Silvestro. But the fastest qualifiers there were Sage Karam, and then Will Power, and then Simona. So that meant that Charlie Kimball and R.C. Anderson were eliminated and will not race in the 500. Rob, your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised to see Charlie Kimball not make the show. I really expected him to at least make the show because the Foyt cars weren't the fastest cars out there, but they had speed. It looked like they had speed. J.R. Hildebrand definitely had a sizable, at least a very decent amount of speed in practice and in qualifying as well. Kellett is Kellett. I expected him to be in that position and not Kimball, honestly. Kimball is a veteran with a lot of experience, And I mean, it's disappointing for Kimball. I hate that for him because he worked so hard to put together. He worked so hard to put together that sponsorship deal so he could run this race. He got to run the GP, but he really wanted to run the Indy 500, and he's been working so hard to put together sponsorship deals so that he can run. You know, it seems like AJ Foyt is willing to run Kimball. They were supposed to run 4 cars this race, but they're only running 3 now with Kimball not making the show. I wasn't as surprised with RC Enerson. Of course, Enerson definitely a better driver than I think that's going to show. You know, Top Gun Racing was a brand new team. There wasn't much rumbling of them until, you know, about late April that it was very clear, okay, by the time they made the final entry list, it was like, okay, this team's here, and they were testing at Gateway and everything, and when it just seemed like when they showed up, they were off the ball, and that tends to happen with underfunded programs, but it could also very well be, and I am not saying I know this at all, but having spoken to Buddy Lazier several times in the past couple of years, I should say, he speaks, you know, about Chevrolet's short program that they have for the 500, and how it's really more of a detriment to the teams than it helps them. You know, it's supposed to be for teams that are on a budget, and it's supposed to help them, but the truth of the matter is it doesn't help them much when they can barely make the show. You know, if there's more than 33 cars that show up, well, at that point, those cars are only exist to be bumped. You know, they don't have any actual real chance to make the race, and that's disappointing. I wish that they had more of a chance to make the race. Enerson, he didn't look out of place. It wasn't like he was crashing. It wasn't like he was, you know, slow. The car just was not set up properly. The engine did not have enough speed. It wasn't trimmed out as much. A lot of that, again, boils down to not having anybody who knows how to work on these cars as well. Not to say that the engineers were like completely dry on it, but you know, you don't have as experienced veterans as you do working for like Penske, Ganassi, Andretti, you know, things like that, or even Ed Carpenter racing team. You know, I think about that. So I was actually really surprised when I saw how slow the Penske cars were. I was concerned about Simona. You know, Simona looked really fast in the early sessions of practice, but then again, so did the Penske cars then. And as the week went on, both her and the Penske cars started to go down the field, and it just seemed like the Penske cars were off on something. And it seemed like that because the Penske cars were off, so was Peretta, because whatever Peretta was using in the technical alliance with Penske, if it wasn't good enough to get the Penske cars faster, obviously it was going to be worse for a single car team with pretty much rookie. I don't want to say that they're all rookies, but like, you know, this is a first year team working together. That's how I'll put it together. A first year team, you know, and much in the same situation as Top Gun Racing. You know, those first year teams are going to have struggles. They're going to have rough time because they don't have any notes. They don't have any prior data to lean back on. So I think that really hindered Peretta Autosport as well as Simona Di Silvestro. Simona's going to be fine, I think. We'll see what happens in Carb Day. I think they'll be further up the charts in Carb Day. I just think something was off on the qual trim. I think you'll see Simona and Will probably race their way up through the field if they're hoping that they're not involved in any accidents and assuming that passing is possible. I really think that they'll be able to work their way up through the field because, you know, it's not possible for drivers to come from the back row and still make their way up through the field. You know, we've seen Tony Kanaan do it a couple of times. We've seen other drivers do it. You know, you can go from the last row and drive your way through the field, especially if passing is easy and you have a relatively fast race setup. It's possible. So, you know, don't want to count out Power or Di Silvestro yet. To even that extent, you don't want to count out Sage Karam because someone mentioned that, I think it was Jay Query that mentioned, Karam qualified in the last row his first time out, and he finished 9th and got the Rookie of the Year and a Hard Charger award and everything. So, you know, you can't even count out Sage Karam because Karam was fast all practice, and then just for some reason when qualifying rolled around, I think a lot of it was he didn't have the right conditions when qualifying rolled around. But even then, he was clearly the fastest in the last row shootout, so it's not like he has the slowest car. You know, so you can't, just because they're in the last row shootout doesn't mean they're entirely out of contention to win. Right. But I am disappointed to see Kimball go home. You know, it's the fastest 33 for a reason. If you're not in the fastest 33, you don't get to race. But so, you know, Indy bites Indy's evil sometimes. But hey, Kimball has nothing to hang his hand about. He still has a third place to his name here at this 500. You know, he has good finishes here. He's got nothing to hang his head on. I'm sure he'll be back next year. And if he's not, then sponsors are stupid because Kimball's a great ambassador for every single brand that would want an ambassador for themselves. And he's also a great color commentator for the Indy Lights. So again, if he doesn't have that, he'll be fine. Don't want to take too much more time on that, but those are my general thoughts right now about qualifying. Don't really have much to say about the Fast 9. Fast 9 to me is not as entertaining, I think, as it should be. But maybe I'm biased because Carpenter didn't get the pole, so I didn't really care. It's really only entertaining to me when Ed Carpenter gets the pole, because then it's like, okay, let's see how cool that is, But Dixon getting the pole is kind of like, okay, well, Dixon's really good, so I can't say I didn't expect this. I mean, VK being P3 and Herta being P2 is actually really cool. So, but anyway, that's all I got to say about Indy 500 qualifying so far.
All right. Well, let's move on here to SRX. There's two pieces of news here. There have been a few additions to the lineup. Greg Biffle will be a driver at Stafford. Scott Speed will be on behind the wheel at Eldora and IRP, and then Scott Bloomquist will be at Knoxville. So pretty cool to see those names added. It's cool to have these guys who are just coming in for one or two races too. I know Haley Deegan's going to be in a race as well. Who else is? I forget. A couple people got some one-offs, but still, it's going to be a fun series to watch. I'm excited for that. Just a few weeks away from that beginning. And then a new Superstar Racing Experience video game comes out this week. I believe it's Friday. And it's been developed by Monster Games. In addition to SRX, its drivers, and its 6 tracks, it will feature over 50 tracks, and will have stadium trucks, 305 wingless sprint cars, and dirt late models. So, I mean, this just sounds like a pretty cool, fun game. And
it's rad, but there's no Switch version, so I'm disappointed. Not that it's annoying to me that I have to get it for my Xbox. Yeah, I say that from first world problems, right? I have 2 game consoles. Yeah, I want to have the luxury of being able to play my game on the toilet. So what? Big deal. I don't know. I'm just disappointed.
You turn the TV the right way and take the controller in there with you.
It's not possible because my bathroom doesn't. You can't see the TV from my bathroom, so
you get it a very complex series of mirrors. Then
you know what though, I will say this: the next NASCAR Heat game or NASCAR 21 or whatever is supposed to come out for the Switch, so I'll cut him some slack on that. But at some point, I'd like to see a Switch port of this because I think this would be really cool for a lot of Switch gamers. It's probably a cheap game. You could, I think they have the game that this is based on is ported to the Switch, so I wouldn't be surprised if it came at some point. But if you have an Xbox or a PS4, then you're fine. You can play this anyway. Or a PC. You can play this anyway. But Switch owners like us are kind of left out. But then there's people who usually have you have an Xbox or PS4 in addition to your Switch, if you have the money at least. Not all people do. This is a first world problem. So, sorry about that.
It is a first world problem, but it's okay. It's okay. But this is a cool game to come out. I don't think I'm going to buy it right away, but definitely one I might buy down the road since I do have a PS4. NASCAR news here. 2 bullet points here. 2 kind of shockers. Both kind of came out of quite literally left field. The first one, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper announced that $30 million from the American Rescue Plan funding will go towards infrastructure repairs to Rockingham Speedway, North Wilkesboro Speedway, and Charlotte Motor Speedway, with each receiving approximately $10 million each.
That's crazy.
Yeah, this is crazy. I mean, when I saw this, I was at work. I'm like, what? Is this a joke? Is this from this Adam Stern fake account, which I have blocked? I'm like, is this coming through? Like, what's going on? Bob Parker's tweeted about it. It's the gospel, folks. He tweeted about it. All right. This is kind of... I don't even know what to make of it for Rockingham, but for North Wilkesboro, it certainly is a huge boost. And I won't speculate what Charlotte Motor Speedway would use for it, but I mean, North Wilkesboro, that's a big deal for them.
That's a lot of money that they need. And you already have people willing to put more money into the Speedway. So now you have a base amount of $10 million plus whatever anyone else wants to invest, like Marcus Lemonis or anyone else like that.
Yeah.
That could be huge for them. But Rockingham, I know, Rockingham doesn't surprise me as much as it probably surprises a lot of other people, because I know, from what I understand, is the state of North Carolina really sees Rockingham as a legitimate, like, not just a motorsports venue, but like a concert venue, like a big
complex.
Yeah, like a giant complex that doesn't
Entertainment
just hold
complex.
motor races. I mean, yes, it would hold motor races because it's honestly one of the most unique ovals in the
World.
country.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
world,
the most unique oval in the country, and it is a crying shame that nothing competitively races there anymore.
Cars Tour is going to be there now in November.
What is?
Cars Tour.
Cars Tour is going to be there. Okay, that's even better. But if we can renovate Rockingham, get NASCAR back on, or at least a truck series back there, that'd be great. Because I think but of course, the problem with Rockingham was that it never worked because fans didn't show up. I think with this money and making Rockingham into a complex, with there being much more to do, if you could create a weekend out of it, add a few concerts here and there, add maybe a couple of shows about other stuff. I don't know, stunt shows, whatever. I don't care.
Drag strip out there.
Drag strip, yeah. Add stuff to that. Make it worth fans' while to come out there and really support it. That could be great. Not just for the complex, but then also for the state of North Carolina, knowing that money is going towards tourism and other things that definitely help the state.
Yeah, the money's coming back. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's big news there. The last one here, again, I think this might be the biggest news of the week. Motorsports Jim Utter broke the news that Roush Fenway Racing has extended an offer to Brad Keselowski to drive for the team full-time next season. It would also come with an ownership role. Utter reported that the team would be renamed RFK Racing, Roush Fenway Keselowski. Keselowski would become the driver of the number 6, displacing Ryan Newman to at least a third car, because the team expects to retain, or it is expected that the team will retain Chris Buescher next season. So my thoughts on this were, I remember Brad wanting to get back to her ownership role, and Brad Keselowski Racing ceased operations at the end of 2017. His aspirations were to kind of get to Cup. This is the opportunity here. A lot of people pointed out, before I haven't really said anything on Twitter. I just kind of commented on it, but I thought too that, this is a way that Jack has an heir to his side of it, at least. He doesn't really have that direct heir, as you might look at. Penske's got committees, in place.
Penske has Tim Cindric.
Yeah.
Hendrick has Jeff Gordon.
Yeah.
Roush has the Fenway Sports Group.
Yeah, he needs someone that is connected more so to the sport. In Keselowski, in this case, if this comes true, is that role that, the Roush name will live on, and Keselowski will handle the racing business, and Fenway will continue to be a part of it. If this comes true, I think this is a great move. I really like it. It might. I would think that him coming there's going to be some sort of boost in funding from Ford, maybe, if they're not getting the same amount as Penske right now, because I think I think Brad Keselowski can still win a championship. I think anyone who doesn't think that's possible is crazy. But
he's done it before, and he beat Jimmy Johnson to do it. In Jimmy Johnson's prime, might I add.
Yes. So I think this would be a great move. It's a great move for Keselowski. It checks off a bunch of boxes for him, secures his future in an ownership desire. It checks boxes for Roush Fenway, that it's going to be around for a while with good, steady, just again, leadership and presence directly in the sport. And it checks a box for NASCAR. A young owner like Denny Hamlin, like a Justin Marks, like a Matt Collig, they're there. Rob, any additional thoughts on it?
I mean, when I first heard it, I was surprised because I think Penske has a tough decision on their hands. I know that the Wood brothers and Penske as well would probably like to retain Matt DiBenedetto, because these are the rumblings that I've heard. And I understand that,
if you remember,
take these rumblings that I hear with a grain of salt, because I take them with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
I'm just reporting what I hear, and I'm telling you, I haven't confirmed this, so don't look too much into it. I'm just saying it for the sake of moving the conversation forward. It really seems like Penske and Wood brothers would prefer to keep Matt DiBenedetto. But then that means something has to happen with Cindric. Now, a fourth car is possible. I mean, the dude could have probably won this past weekend, and we'll talk about this later. Yeah. And it would have been crazy to have seen him win in what is essentially an R&D car.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think that given how strong of performances Austin Cindric has, I mean, this guy, again, and I've said it, his progression from 16, 17 to now is astounding.
Very.
It is astounding. He is a completely different driver, a fast driver, a complete wheel man. And so I look at that and I say, well, why displace Matt D, who's still getting you top 10s, top 5s? And, he could do the job, and Cindric could do the job as well, but you have two good drivers you have to decide between. If this gives Penske an opportunity to not have to decide between those two drivers, I think they should say, okay, Brad, if you want to walk, go ahead and walk. We have a backup plan. We wish you all the best. Go take this opportunity and go enjoy it. If that's Brad's MO, then that's great, because I think Roush needs someone. Roush could benefit from someone like Keselowski. I think Keselowski brings a lot of experience, the same amount of experience that Ryan Newman brought, because you definitely saw Roush start to get better as soon as Ryan Newman was brought in. They started to perform significantly better. Newman started to perform significantly better. I mean, Newman had already been performing pretty well with Childress, the second place of 2014 and everything, and even like wins in 2016. I think he had wins then.
17
and 17. So he was a consistent driver, but with Roush, he's been just as equally consistent. We don't like to talk about last year's Daytona 500, but let's not forget he was still in contention. He was basically a Daytona 500 champion until about 500 feet from the finish. So the guy still has it. I don't think there's any reason for Roush to displace Newman. I think they could only benefit from having Buescher, Newman, and Keselowski on the team. I understand if they don't want to go to a third team, but I really think that Keselowski could at the very least bring more sponsorship dollars that would allow them to operate a third team. I don't think
even if it's uncharted. I don't think it's a good move for Roush to get rid of Ryan Newman. I think if Ryan Newman still wants to race, he's going to race, and he's going to race well, because Ryan Newman has shown almost no fall off that I've noticed in terms of driving ability. I mean, he's not winning as much as he was in like 2002, 3, 4, and 5, but at the same time, he's still consistent. He's much better than the Roush 6 car was, before he took it over. Great. So, I think that he's just struggling because Roush is still struggling. Roush still is not where they need to be. I think the addition of Keselowski would, in theory, push not just the team, but Newman and Buescher as well up to that next level, because they can go to Keselowski, who's a champion of the sport, and he comes from a Brickyard winner and a bunch of other things. It's entirely possible for him to elevate that organization. Yeah, I think, like I said, be a great move all the way around. Everyone be a winner here. So that's it for the news here. We're going to move on now to featured paint scheme, and I have so kindly chosen the 2001 Formula One World Championship season. Rob, what is your featured paint scheme this week?
All right, so you picked the one that I've always loved, but that's okay because I have backup one. You don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I like this one. So my selection is actually the Williams FW23, and this car has a great story. Car has a beautiful look to it. Everything. So first of all, it's got HP Compact sponsorship along with BMW Power. So it's basically a blue and white scheme entirely. It very much looks like, or it has some gray in there as well, and it's got the blue BMW livery. It looks like a standard BMW livery, but it's got a bunch of old computer sponsors on it, which I always love, the HP and the Compaq and everything like that. I always love that. But it was fast. It was very fast. But good heavens, was this thing unreliable. This thing was so unreliable. They've had 18 combined retirements between both Montoya and Ralf Schumacher. Somehow, thanks to, every other team in F1, also could be because only the top 6 scored points back then, but also because a lot of other cars were probably just as unreliable as this. I don't know, but somehow, even with 18 combined retirements between the two cars, they still finished third in the championship, while Ferrari and McLaren ran away with it all. But hey, they scored 4 victories in the season. Ralf Schumacher actually had 3, Imola, Montreal, Hockenheim, and then Montoya captured his maiden F1 win at Monza. So, it was a good season in comparison maybe to other F1 teams below Williams, but I think it's definitely not one of Williams' greater seasons especially given where they were, say, 6 years prior,
Right.
championship
4 years
winners,
prior.
and
4 years prior.
oh yeah, even 4 years prior with Villeneuve.
Yeah.
I forgot it. Even Villeneuve had that. But yeah, so very, very interesting, a beautiful paint scheme nonetheless. Still always love those old Formula One cars. Always got to pull out my old F1 games for GameCube and Xbox because those were fun little EA Sports games there, even though they were very basic, but still very fun. I also love that V10 sound. Gotta love a V10 screaming down the straightaways at Monza or Hockenheim. Oh, can't get any better than that. Josh, who did you pick?
Evidently, you like this one.
Well, I like this one because my dad, when he took me to the F1 race in 2000 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, he pointed this one out. Obviously, it was 2000, not 2001, but he still pointed this out. Same kind of idea, same kind of paint scheme. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
he liked this car because a Dutch driver drove for them. And Josh, tell us who that Dutch driver and team, not Dutch team, but team plus their Dutch driver was.
Well, I'm going with the Orange Arrows A22. The car was base black, orange spread throughout. It screams Halloween here in the United States, but orange is my favorite color. So this is probably why it appeals so much to me.
I come from Dutch heritage, so orange is like everything to me.
Oh, there you go.
My kindergarten photo is me in an orange t-shirt, an orange collared polo. Orange is everything. It's the soccer team's national kit color is orange. Netherlands. Yes, their colors are red, white, and blue, like most every other flag in the world. But for whatever reason, orange is the national color. So I love orange even more so for that reason.
Yeah, we saw a lot of orange this weekend. Spoiler alert, later, one of the races. The orange part comes from a French multinational telecommunications company. I can speak today. So among the, I just like this car a lot. So the drivers were Jos Verstappen and
there's the Dutchman.
Yeah, and Enrique Rinaldi, and Rinaldi had a horrendous year.
It was awful in that season.
Gosh.
Oh my god.
In 17 races, so there were 17 races back in 2001. He had 10 retirements. 10 retirements, and I failed to. He had his best finish was a 10th, and that was at San Marino. So other than that, he had a 9th. At Monaco. He had a 9th at Monaco, and he had a 10th at San Marino. And he's 14th in the British Grand Prix, 8th in Germany, 12th in Belgium, 13th in the USA, and 14th at the season-ending race in Japan. All right, Jos, he had a better year than him. He only retired 5 times, so that's an improvement. But yeah, you said here that Williams retired 18 times and finished third in Constructors' Championship. They had 80 points. So Arrows Orange had 15 retirements. They had 1 point and finished 10th in the Constructors' Championship.
Well, 4 wins is going to... back then, when the top 6 scored points, 4 wins is still going to net you a solid amount of points, even if your cars fail to finish every other race.
It's very true. Jos, his 6th place, which was worth 1 point, came at Austria. I don't think it was called the Red Bull Ring yet.
No, I think it was the A1 ring back then, because that was it. Actually, an Austrian telecom company was A1 that sponsored the Red Bull Ring back then.
So there you go.
And when the Red Bull Ring originally it shut down, that's why it's called the Red Bull Ring now. Is because Red Bull bought it and updated it, and they've pretty much been in control of it ever since.
Yeah.
Red Bull is an Austrian company. They're very big into auto racing motorsports, so of course it makes sense for them to buy the Austrian Formula One facility.
Yeah. So yeah, that was mine. I forgot that Arrows was even around in 2001. I thought they had shut down prior to that. But
Arrows stayed around until 2002.
Yeah, it was 2 or 3, I guess.
The last, because my dad loved Jos Verstappen. I saw him over the weekend, and I asked him. I said, "Did you watch Monaco?" And he said, "Oh yes," because he watches Formula One because he wants Max Verstappen to win because he loves Max.
Yeah.
Dutch Dutch guy, because I am Dutch. If you haven't noticed, there's 2 E's in my last name, and that's kind of not normal. It's because it's, Dutch. It's pronounced Peeters in reality, but, over here, they pronounce it differently. So, but yeah, I've been in touch with my Dutch heritage, and as a result, I don't cheer for Max Verstappen because I try to be, neutral about most things, but if he wins, it's a little bit more special than if Hamilton wins, I guess, for me, or probably for anybody. But and that's not to take anything away from Hamilton. We said the same thing, 10 years ago when Vettel won. It's like, okay, well, when Hamilton wins, it's great. Anyone other than the guy who's winning the majority of the races, as long as they win, who cares?
Right. I did want to say, share this one point. At Monaco, they put a front wing, extended top.
That's right. I do remember that.
And it was immediately banned by the FIA on the basically the grounds of safety. Because as a driver, today it may not be as bad because you had the halo, but imagine if that thing came detached and hit the driver in the helmet. I'm like, ooh, that would be.
Oh, bad. Dude, do you remember the first year of the IndyCar aero kits?
Back in
2015. The first race of the IndyCar aero kits at St. Petersburg. Juan Pablo Montoya won it. And it was notorious for having so many debris cautions because there was so many aero bits and pieces.
Oh, yes.
The first race,
yes.
Chevy and Honda basically designed unbelievably aerodynamically sensitive race cars. So much so that they had front wings, downforce creating rear wings placed on the front wings, on the very front of the front wings. And those things kept coming off amongst contact or whatever. And they had to keep throwing cautions, and eventually IndyCar was like, all right, simplify your aero kits, guys. You guys it's cool that you've done so much great innovation, but you guys are going to have to simplify this because we're not going to have to throw 80 debris cautions because you guys can't develop these parts to stay on properly.
Right. I do remember that. Now you remind me of that, but I thought this was a cool thing, and I won't say that's partly the reason I picked it, but it was kind of part of the reason because I did want to share that little tidbit. And if I knew you were going to pick this one, I would have picked it.
But I was only going to pick it because my dad loves Jos Verstappen, and that's why I'm nostalgic about this paint scheme. But other than that, I wanted to talk about the paint scheme of the car that pretty much had 18 combined retirements, 4 wins, and still finished third in the Constructors' title.
We chose some bangers when it came to the retirements grid.
We sure did. Well, of course, back then, if you weren't in a McLaren or a Ferrari, you were not going to win a race. It's a miracle Williams pulled off 4 wins as it did. But every other race, it was you were lucky if the engine would last. You know what I mean?
Very true. Very true. All right, let's move on here. Let's move on to some of the races we're going to discuss. The first one here, the truck race at Circuit of the Americas, NASCAR's first race at COTA in Austin, Texas. And, wow. The one thing I worried about this entire weekend wasn't Mother Nature. It was the truck race and the kind of the separation of the field. It got spread out quickly. And we're kind of glad that qualifying did happen because we probably sent some very slow trucks home, and I hate to say that. But, this field got spread out rapidly. And
I've seen some feeder series races with large, disproportionate speeds that were still not as exciting as that truck race. So even though what you're saying is true, the trucks were spread out, and it was really obvious that there was a lot of speed disproportions. Compared to some of the races that get like that, this was honestly one of the better ones. I got to give it that.
And with that said, I was going to say it was an exciting race. Let me say this now. All right? If you take out, spoiler alert, the violent crashes from Sunday, Circuit of the Americas was a win. It was a
win no matter what, even with the crashes.
It was still a win, yes. I thought it was a great weekend. All 3 races. I don't think the hashtag's not going to get any momentum because I don't have that many followers. But I said bring back COTA or bring COTA back in 22. I hashtag that. I want it back. And I saw some people from various outlets said, Is COTA done? Is COTA done? And I'm like, no, we can't let this.
Just saying that.
Yeah, I'll I know there was one thing on front stretch of podcast deal.
Okay, well, that's fine, but let's be honest here. If they're going to do anything, the thing should not be not go to Coda. It should be probably considering at least for the truck series, please, running the short course. These 2 to 3 minute lap times were ridiculous. That's my only complaint.
Well, and again, I think that was one thing that was on the table back in the fall, was that maybe the truck in the Xfinity would run the shorter course and the Cup would run.
Xfinity and Cup did fine on the long course.
I agree.
It was truck that was awful to watch on the long course.
You're right, and again, I think that just comes with first off, the disparity between first and 10th is crazy, and then but 10th to 36th was woo. But again, I thought the race was great. Todd Gilliland ends up winning the race. First win
for him too. Good for Todd.
Yes, very good for Todd. Locks him in the playoffs. He's kind of that border truck again this year. He wasn't able to get that win last year. First win for Front Row Motorsports in the Truck Series. First win for Ford this year. Maybe only one of the few that they get because it's only him, Haley Deegan, and Tanner Gray. Tanner Gray in the 15 for DGR. So, good for Ford. And you had Toyota win the first 7 races. Now Chevy and Ford have both won. So yeah, I thought it was a great race. I wanted Andy Lally in the Fox Sports booth. If he's not in the truck booth at Watkins Glen, something's wrong. Because he did a fantastic job commentating. And I know he maybe didn't share everything because, he had to go race after that. And he didn't want to share everything to everybody. But even the stuff he shared was enlightening to even me as a fan who have been watching this for a while. I can't even imagine what it meant to a fan who is new to NASCAR, and this was one of their first road races they've watched. So, clapping for Andy Lally, great job. Rob, were you able to watch this race? Because I know the 500 qualifying was going on at this point.
Oh yeah, I watched it.
Okay.
I mean, look, I got 2 TVs. I can.
That's right. I always forget you have 2 TVs.
Don't forget that. I did watch all of it, and it was a great race. I had a good time watching. I mean, like I said, I've watched way worse races with way more spread out fields than that, so I had no major problems with the quality of racing, at least. But Andy Lally was good in the booth. I felt, from a racing standpoint, Truck Series was good. I'm excited again for the Truck Series. I'm excited for the Truck Series against Watkins Glen. That's just really what I'm excited about because they put on a good show at Coda. Obviously, I think it could have been a little bit better, but I think the rain had something to do with that. I think the rain made for some good racing, and then it also made for some bad racing. There were portions and points in there where the truck race was really, really good and really, really entertaining, and then there were some points where it was like, yeah, this is a bit of a snooze fest now, but Todd Gilliland racing it hard at the end and getting the victory was really cool to see. I was really happy to see him win it because that's somebody who I feel like is kind of underrated, kind of has fallen under the radar. I think that first season with Kyle Busch Motorsports kind of made people think he's not as good as maybe some of his other competitors, but going out there with Front Row Motorsports, which is crazy. Front Row Motorsports, dude. Obviously, I guess Michael McDowell has said, oh, hey, they can prepare good road course cars too. So I guess they're just underperforming for no reason, I guess. I don't know. On the regular basis. But outside of that, I was just really impressed with Todd Gilliland and his ability to race in the rain, his ability to race in a road course in the rain. Just all very, very impressive for me. I think that's the biggest thing I'm going to take away from this, and I think it's put Todd Gilliland maybe even in a higher put him up in a higher level in my mind.
Okay, a couple other things I wanted to point out here. Your man Paul Menard returned to racing. He finished 11th, just outside of a top 10 there.
Still good.
Still good. I think I mentioned one of us have maybe mentioned this before, but I really think he was going to run a couple races with Team Penske last year in the Xfinity Series, and just COVID kind of shelved those plans. Because I think he expressed a desire to do that at the end of 2019. Grant Enfinger. Dude, just needs to drive for Cody Rohrbaugh the rest of the year. That guy, when he's in that 9 truck, top 5. He's running top 5 in that truck. And has he? If he's missed a race this year, has he? I'm looking it up right now. It loads. He has missed one. Oh, that's a bummer. And so I would that's a bummer because he's a championship threat in that 9 truck, hands down. And then Parker Kligerman, last thing I'll say here, how many times did we see Parker have an issue? The dude winds up 13th. He winds up 13th. Again, there's a guy who, like, if he's in that 75 truck a full season in the truck series, I think he can make it into the playoffs, even in on points, but maybe with the win, because I think Parker's got the talent to do it. All right, so let's move on now. The Xfinity Series, the Truck Series was run Saturday at 1 in the wet. The Xfinity Series started. The track was damp. It was put, at least like that. NASCAR brought the field down pit road. Drivers could pitch if they wanted to change their tires before actually starting the race. They actually did that before they even did the pit road speed check, which I thought was interesting. And I think everyone went and changed to slicks at that point, and the race was running the dry for the rest of the day. My goodness. Another good race. Another great race. This one was definitely dominated by Kyle Busch. This was a classic Kyle Busch kicking the Busch Series butt, except it was Xfinity Series in 2021. But I thought it was a great race. Again, there's racing in both of these races throughout the field. All right, maybe just at the front. But I think the big turning point here, Rob, was when AJ Allmendinger did not pit in the caution before the end of stage 1, because you had a caution that came out, and I forget now who that was for, but it was for it led to a 1-lap shootout to end stage 1. And as I scroll down here, the caution was, the 99 of the 13 were stalled on the track. So Allmendinger was told by his crew, "Hey, it's your decision to pit here or not." Well, the 54 pitted, as well as with a bunch of other cars, and then the 16 did not. Well, great, you won the stage, you got 10 points, you got a playoff point, but now you're stuck back in traffic. And I feel like that put the 16 car behind. He used up his equipment, I think, a little bit rougher than he would have wanted. And he didn't have enough time to learn how to beat Kyle in the clean air. Because black traffic wasn't going to be an issue in these races for the most part, as short as these two races were in the stages. So yeah, that was my opinion on it. I think AJ was maybe the only car that could have gone toe to toe with Kyle. I think Cindric was missing a little bit of something in this race, kind of surprising on that one. But yeah, I also want to give a shout out to you, and Rob, then I'll let you talk. Ross Chastain, okay. Joe Graf Jr. says, "Hey, I can't race today. My knee's hurting me." They call Ross Chastain in the morning. He puts the car in second place in qualifying. All right? And I'm like, okay, we're going to have a really good race here, guys. Ross Chastain just jumped into this car, and then he has an axle break on the first lap. I'm like, oh, gosh, talk about feeling defeated. But again, this race, solid. Even if Kyle Busch spanked the field, it was still a great race. And again, like you mentioned, I enjoyed these cars going on the full circuit.
Kyle Busch wins the race. I mean, he earned it. He fully earned it. I mean, it wasn't like he was the only car in contention. I mean, there weren't other cars that could have beat him if they wanted to, or if they could. But Kyle just drove away because Kyle's good at road courses. And that's really the number one reason why I expected him to probably win on Sunday. He didn't win on Sunday. I thought he was going to win a couple of times where I really thought he was going to win on Sunday. But, outside of that, I was just overall very impressed with the quality of racing, impressed with the drivers. It was very interesting to see kind of how the track changed when the track started to dry, and to see kind of how the cars raced in the dry, and the cars raced really well and really fun in the dry. So it was really good time. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good Xfinity race. Xfinity races are always some of my favorites, so this one was no exception really to that.
One thing I did want to add here, or two things, I guess. Noah Gragson, my goodness. This team just can't buy a break. Unfortunately, I think at this point I'm definitely shifting just because this unlucky penny that they've got in their car. I'm focusing on, okay, we got to win if we're going to make it into these playoffs, because we may not, the rate we're DNFing, the rate we're having this bad luck finishing low in the field, we may not point our way in. So shifting concentration to winning a race. And then Daniel Hemrick wins the Hard Charger Award for me. He got up to 4th after having issues with the transmission and gear sticking or something. I never did hear what the actual issue was, but there were twice that the team had to jump into the car to fix it. And that was after even starting in the back of the field because he had a transmission change. And then he wound up finishing 29th. So bummer for him because he raced his tail off. And again, where that car was, the results don't tell the whole story once more. And Daniel Hemrick, we have beat this dead horse, but that win is coming. I just know he's going to win this year. They're going to find a way to close it out. And a couple of these races, he's had bad luck. That's what kept him out of victory lane, was just simply bad luck. All right, on to the Cup Series. The Echo Park Texas Grand Prix. First off, love the name. I like that it didn't have a number associated with it, like the Glen. At the Glen, we've had so many the Bud at the Glen and whatever. But so having the Grand Prix was really neat. I didn't have a problem racing in the rain. The biggest deal here, I think, if you take the backstretch out, there really wasn't an issue with the rest of the track until later in the race when the rain was coming down hard. And then when you see cars actually shoving water out of the way with the splitter, then that's when there was a problem. But the visibility down the backstretch was the main concern. And I remember, again, I was working on Sunday. I was able to watch this race this morning before I went to work and before we record this podcast. But I remember watching the Martin Truex wreck. I'm like, he can't see a thing at all. And that was actually after I saw the damage to Cole Custer's car. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? But up until that point, I mean, the racing was really good. Again, the rain. NASCAR can race in the rain, folks. We've done it for years. I just hope that with recency bias, and I know I'm talking a lot here, and I apologize to our listeners, but I know with recency bias is such an issue in today's world that I hope that this race doesn't ruin rain racing for stock car fans, because rain racing can be done. The Xfinity Series and Truck Series have done it countless times in the past 5-6 years. What we had here was kind of a unique issue. We haven't had a rain race at a track that had such a long backstretch where you get such high speeds. The guys were still getting in the 4th gear at this point. So, hey, I love the race. Austin Cindric, you mentioned him, was impressive. Led laps, took the lead the first corner and led the first few laps there, and really did an impressive job in the slicks in a wet racetrack. The kid is talented. When he's ultimately probably going to be in the 2 car next year, watch out. All right? But yeah, I thought it was great race all around. I love the circuit. Again, I just don't know what else to say. I just love the racing. Rob, obviously, Chase won the race, was declared. The rain came down too hard there. With about 17 to go, you were clearly seeing, okay, the track conditions have worsened. Okay, the track conditions have worsened. You start seeing cars hydroplane. Kurt Busch totally missed turn 12 there, nearly clipping 2 cars, including his brother. They bring the cars down pit road. They very shortly later say, we're done. We're done. They didn't even try to get the cars out there, or the Air Titans out there, to clear the backstretch because the whole track was the issue instead of just the backstretch that time. Chase Elliott wins the race. That's a 268th win for Hendrick Motorsports, ties Richard Petty Motorsports in lineage for most wins by a team in NASCAR Cup Series history. And it was the 800th win for Chevrolet. Quite a momentous day there for the Bowtie camp on the 9 car. Rob, your thoughts. Your thoughts there.
Yeah, I had a really fun time watching the race this weekend. I thought it was a great Just a great overall race for the Cup Series. Cup Series put a great show on at COTA. The rain, here's the thing I say about the rain. You know, there's obviously always going to be a period of time where visibility is going to be a problem. And, you know, NASCAR's not immune to that. No series is immune to that. You know, NASCAR has developed rain tires. That's great. Goodyear's developed rain tires. That's great. NASCAR says, okay, we can race in the rain. Let's do it. I've got no problem with them going out and racing in the rain. I don't understand why guys like Kevin Harvick are like, oh, it's so dangerous out here. And I'm like, no, there's nothing dangerous about it. You guys just weren't being smart when you're racing in the rain. You can't be going full throttle the whole time. You got to be careful. And NASCAR also should have been a little bit smarter. It's not just on the drivers. I'm not saying it's just on the drivers. The drivers have to be, there has to be a lot of responsibility taken by the drivers, but also the sanctioning body. NASCAR should have realized a little bit sooner that, okay, there's too much standing water here. We need to dry the track, dry the track, or at the very least put some air Titans out on the backstretch to see what we can do. And they did do that during the long red flag. And it worked, but ultimately, what are you going to do when, you know, excuse me, there's just a giant cell of rain that's just over the track? You know, and, you know, it's disappointing that they had to call the race early because there was just a lot of great pit strategy playing out. It was really fun to see how the pit strategy played out. And, you know, the way they were talking about, like, fuel saving there at the end, you know, you don't really think about fuel saving at Circuit of the Americas because you see most of the races in Formula One, they don't refuel, so you don't think about that. But yes, Circuit of the Americas is a long track. Like I said, we were talking about 2.5, 3 minute lap times on average, especially even longer sometimes in the rain. And crew chiefs are sitting here like, yeah, we need you to save me about a lap or two of fuel. And Larry Mack made up a good point. Like, that's 7 miles.
Yeah,
like
that's 7 miles.
You're asking me to save 7 miles worth of gas?
That's a bad.
Like, how am I going to do that?
Larry said it's a gallon and a half. About a gallon and a half of fuel. And that's a lot.
A gallon and a half of fuel, 7 miles worth that you have to save. That's insane. For any driver, no driver could do that. You're asking an insane. So towards the end of that, that's what really bothered me was we were looking to see some very interesting pit strategy was probably going to play out in the closing sections of that race. So it's disappointing that the race ended the way it did. Again, NASCAR did say also that there were lightning in the area, and that's also why they had to call the race. So again, there's not much you can do when you have too much standing water and lightning. But NASCAR can't really look at the car and fault the car. Like, yes, cars are going to rooster tail. They're going to credit rooster tails. Like, just guys got to learn how to deal with it. And NASCAR has to be smarter of when to stop the race and when to say, okay, it's safe to race in the rain.
Well,
that's
and to be
my biggest thing. No, I was done.
I think the Air Titans did a fantastic job. Did it clear the issue up 100%? No. But when you looked at the last flying lap, all right, compared to the first flying lap after the Air Titans, there was a big difference. I mean, at least you could maybe make out, okay, there's a car in front of me instead of, oh, crap, that's a red light flashing. I'm already on top of the guy. I can't brake. Not to the safety of these cars. The foam barrier, oh my gosh, good to see Cole Custer get out of that car as quickly as he did. That was a very scary moment. That car was destroyed. Oh my gosh. What was the other point I was going to bring up? And now I cannot remember. But again, I enjoyed the race. It met my expectations. Actually, it exceeded my expectations. I enjoyed the S's. I enjoyed there was 4 legitimate spots to make a pass in the dry or the wet. Bring it back. I would love to see. Of course, it all kind of depends on where the All-Star race is, but of course, I would love to see this race maybe earlier in the year. But I know Sonoma. We've said that before, but I guess it's the rainy season early in the year. Anyways. This is just a great race. Good job. Speedway Motorsports did a great job. I can't believe, Rob, did you see some of the tweets where they had to replace the outlets at Circuit of the Americas because they were all European? Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me, given how often... Well, that wouldn't surprise me because, let's be honest, really one of the only major North American racing series that's raced there a long time was IndyCar. So... but even then, there's a lot of Europeans in IndyCar that probably didn't mind. But you think about WEC, IMSA, even though IMSA is US based, I mean, there's still a lot of European crossover. So yeah, a lot, and MotoGP, obviously, yeah. That doesn't surprise me at all. That really doesn't surprise me, given how much European racing takes place at Circuit Americas, which is another reason why it's as cool as it is. The track is cool as it is.
Yeah, that just blew my mind. I would never have thought about that. So yeah, let's bring it back. I thoroughly enjoyed this race. I was pumped. I was glad I was able to watch 2 races, and then I definitely made sure I woke up at 8 o'clock this morning to watch this race on the DVR there. So, you know, I hope it comes back. I hope people. The last time I checked, I voted on. I don't ever really vote on the Jeff Gluck poll, but when I voted, I was really just heartbroken. I clicked yes. Was it a good race? Only 52% of the votes had a yes. It was a good race, and I'm going to go ahead and update here. So Jeff Gluck, I'm going to steal a tad bit of your thunder here. Was Coda a good race? Scrolling down, holy cow!
You're kidding me? Is it
right
really
now,
that low?
Right now, yes. With this post was posted 17 hours ago. As I read this off, there's been 19,731 votes. 6 hours, 17 minutes left.
Oh my gosh!
53% say yes, it was a good race, and that's with. I'm sorry, I mean the most popular driver winning, Chase Elliott. So I have to. Again, we talk about the recency bias thing, and I don't really want to harp on this, but you got to think that the violent crashes and the overall just a poorly orchestrated race that that's got to play into the factor there, and people just aren't objectively thinking about it, and that's so crazy for me to say. Like, you'll never get 10% of people on Twitter to be objective about a decision or their vote casting on a poll, but my goodness, that was, again, as I said before, if you take away the violent crashes, that was a very good race in the rain, and except maybe for the last 2-3 laps that were actually run under green conditions. Prior to that, and take away the crashes, that was a good race, folks. My goodness. We need about 50,000 people to get on there and vote yes. That is the true deal. But we do, hey, we appreciate Jeff Gluck doing that. Even though maybe sometimes NASCAR doesn't. But yeah. Speedway Motorsports, Texas Motor Speedway, great job. Good move. We'll see you in 3 weeks at Texas Motor Speedway. 3 weeks? 3 weeks. We'll see you 3 weeks at Texas Motor Speedway. We'll be back. All right. On to the next race we'll specifically talk about in length. And that was the oddly dated Monaco Grand Prix.
Oh boy, I've been waiting to talk about this all week.
Good grief. As I mentioned in the opening, this just felt so weird. To have it the week before, it needed to start 2 hours sooner because the lighting was off. It's me being very nitpicky. I like my races to be started around 1 o'clock. All right, local time. I really do. Noon, 1 o'clock, and this was not noon, 1 o'clock local time. The sun was in the wrong position. It began when it should have ended. All right, let me go on there. But let's start with the absolutely painful for the Charles Leclerc fans. He didn't start this race. He did not start this race.
Awful.
I mean, this was a day that he could have won, got that Monaco monkey on his back, but guess what? He's going to have to wait till 2022. My goodness. So he crashed. He got the pole and crashed, and Ferrari gambled that they didn't change the drive shaft, and the car didn't run, correct? This didn't go in morning warm-up.
Yeah, I don't think it was able to start.
Yeah, so they painfully showed the car parked like on the opening lap of the race, and like, this is horrible. And I think they later came out and said like it wouldn't have mattered, which I guess is good. That whether they changed it or not, I don't know. It just depends. But Verstappen obviously takes the lead right away. He covers Bottas into turn 1, as he should have. He had his car angled in the box on the starting box there, and sit sail, let every lap from there on out. And then Bottas. I mean, Bottas was the big chance here because Hamilton had a horrible qualifying, P7 in qualifying, and Bottas, the bad luck strikes him once again in the pit stop, and the nut on the wheel gets machined. And I just read before on here that the tire is still on that car until it gets back to the factory in England. They can't get the tire off. So
I read that exact same thing too.
I cannot believe that. That's how bad this is. Yeah, go on from there. And it was, Hamilton did not have a great pit stop or great cycle. He came out worse. And yeah, Rob, your thoughts on the race? I mean, I thought it was a solid race for Monaco standards.
Yeah. Well, it's Monaco, okay? So Monaco
with these cars.
Monaco's never going to be a good track, and we saw this multiple times. We know, we know that it's impossible to pass. There's just no passing. It's not going to happen. You have to have smaller cars. There's a lot of, and I'll get to these in a little bit. I watched Formula 2 races and Formula Regional European Championship race there as well this weekend. Smaller cars. Guess what they were able to do? Pass. Guess what Formula E was able to do? Pass. It's amazing what you could do as long as when you don't have such girthy cars. Look, Monaco can be a good street circuit.
Absolutely.
Formula E proved that. Formula E proved that Monaco can be a good street circuit. Heck, even Formula 2's put on some good races. These could be good. Obviously, there's going to be situations and times where passing is still going to be at a premium, but it's not impossible. It's doable. You don't necessarily always have to send it into Saint Devant to be able to pass. There's other places that you could get them. You can get them, out of the casino and into the hairpin. They're not the hairpin. They're the little chicane. That's a possibility. We saw in the Formula 2 race that it's possible to pass in Rascasse. We saw that. It was very close, but it's possible. But I don't think a Formula 1 car would have made it through side by side with Rascasse. It would not have happened. No, Formula 2 it can, but in F1, no way.
We saw the last time they were in Monaco when two drivers try to go side by side through Rascasse. A car ended up in the wall. They're just too long. They're two longer cars.
And that's the biggest issue. But in terms of pit strategy, obviously that was a bummer because Bottas was probably going to give Verstappen a run for his money, and that was probably going to be the main pit strategy battle was going to be between Mercedes and Red Bull, who can basically undercut the other. Man, as soon as Bottas came in and as soon as I saw they had that wheel problem, I was like, well, that's it. That's the race. Good win for Verstappen. All he's got to do is just keep it out of the wall. That's all he's got to do. He can just nurse the car home for the rest of the race. Now that's pretty much all he's got to do. But this is what bothers me. That's Toto Wolff and Mercedes have the nerve to go ahead and blame this on Bottas. You hear what did you hear this? He blamed Bottas for stopping too late, and that's what got the wheel gun. It bent the wheel gun had attached, and because Bottas didn't stop at this one specific time, it bent the bolt or the lug nut or whatever. No, that's ridiculous. No, this was not a driver error. This was a situation that happens in racing. Sometimes lug nuts get bent. I've had it happen on my personal car before. It's not an impossible thing to have happen.
Yeah.
And in this situation, obviously the gun failed. The bolt had some problem with it, But Toto Wolff cannot blame that on Bottas. That is not fair to Bottas. Bottas was in that race for you guys, and your pit crew screwed it up.
Yeah.
Something on your pit crew screwed it up. It was not Bottas stopping improperly. I've seen plenty of cars get through their pit box, their pit box in Formula 1. And even then, they're still able to rebound, and they don't have that problem. So that is total BS. I'm calling BS on Toto Wolff here.
And I could have been, too, that the lug nut was already in the process of being machined. In that, if it wasn't aligned square, that little bit right there, just all right, it's done. It's done, and we're screwed. But
it's not fair to blame the mechanic, but it's not fair to blame Bottas either.
No, it's a racing incident. It happens. As you mentioned, it can happen on your actual car. I've, knock on wood, haven't had that happen to me, but I can only imagine the frustration. I've had a nut be machined before, just on a home project or a project back in shop class in high school, but it's not or a screw. It can happen on a screw as well. In a very similar sense. This is no one's fault, but I would say square one. Someone should have checked this. I mean, someone to me probably missed a pre-race check or a pre-trip to Monaco check on the nut itself, and that's what I would be more so looking at. Okay, what went wrong there? And you can bet, just like anything else, just like what happened with Kyle Larson at Talladega, and they didn't remove that one cover from the radiator, and his car blew up on the first lap. All right, that's going to get double checked from now on. Well, these nut conditions are going to be checked going forward at Mercedes. Twice, maybe even 3 times. The big win here, there's 2 big wins in this race. Vettel overcutting Gasly in Hamilton. He won that. By the way, I was talking to a guy yesterday at work. So this was Sunday at work after the race. He had an Aston Martin F1 hat on. I said, hey, they had a good day today. And he goes, yeah, I won $5,000 because Vettel finished a P6 or above. I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, I bet 300 to win 5,000. I'm like, well, you had a good day then, my friend. And yeah. Rob's
got the gamble that paid off.
That is he's like, my day really went good when Leclerc didn't start, and then when Bottas didn't drop down, like, I think I got this, and then he overcuts, then it gets into P5. I'm like, okay, well, hey, good job.
They cut away from the past to show Lance Stroll going.
I know. Who in the heck did that? That was
terrible.
Terrible television directing. And then the other thing was Perez, and I'll talk about him a little bit later, but he did his job. At the end of the day, Red Bull takes the championship lead in both drivers and constructors championships.
Everybody who questioned Red Bull's move to take Perez. Everybody was like, oh, but you guys have so many junior drivers. You have so many good junior drivers and all this other stuff. Everybody who's questioning this should be eating their words right now, because this is exactly what we said when this announcement was made.
Yep.
This is the best move for Red Bull if they want to challenge for the constructors title, because all you have to do is have a Mercedes have a problem, and as long as you have Perez finishing in the top 5 or better, and Verstappen winning the race, you are golden. And that is exactly what happened this weekend. I honestly think if they still had Albon, or if they still had Gasly, I think that they would have finished back down in 6th, 7th, or 8th. They would not have finished 4th like Perez did. And that, I understand, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Oh, well, but that's only a couple more positions. But that's a lot of points.
That's a lot of points that's different from P4 to P8. It's a lot of points left on the table.
And so you basically have Red Bull getting as many points as they can. I mean, obviously, it was going to be difficult to get Perez higher than 4th, given where he qualified and given how hard it is to pass. Monaco is basically, you have to, as soon as you know where you're going to qualify, you have to 110%. You have to work from sundown to sun up pretty much on your race strategy, because it is the only way you're going to make up positions is on race strategy, pit stop time, all of those things. And Perez did it to a T. He basically made up as many positions as he could. Vettel did as well. Both drivers doing very well. As for when it comes to strategy, both teams, Aston Martin and Red Bull, doing exactly what they needed to do. And it's great to see Vettel have such good success. This was his really first successful outing with Aston Martin. And this is Aston Martin saying, hey, we're down, but we're not out. We're still the same team that won races last year. We're still the same team that sat on poles last year and took the fight to Mercedes and Red Bull. We're still the team that can challenge. And even Ferrari did great with Sainz being on the podium. McLaren did great with Norris being on the podium. Ferrari could have had a 1-2 day, but it doesn't matter because I think Sainz getting that podium is really big for him and his career, because I think that shows a lot of what Sainz is capable of as a driver. And a lot of people probably looked at him because he's been with Toro Rosso, with Renault, with McLaren, not exactly teams that can win races. He's now here with Ferrari. Ferrari's rebuilding themselves. Sainz with a P2. I think if Mercedes has another day like they had at Monaco, I wouldn't be surprised, especially at a track where you can pass. I would not be surprised to see Sainz go out there and challenge for a win here pretty soon.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting in 2 weeks when they go to Baku. And
Baku's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And I just want to share this little tweet here that I think says a lot. And it's again, keeping things in perspective. It's from Dario Franchitti. He tweeted, "Not a classic GP by any means, but the fact that no one can pass doesn't diminish the skills required by the F1 drivers to keep the car between the barriers for 78 on the lap limits, on the limit laps of Monaco."
And that goes back into playing strategy. I mean, your team is going to ask you, okay, we need you to set this kind of lap time, but we also need you to look after your tires. And, oh, by the way, you pretty much have, say, less than a few feet between you and a wall every single turn.
Yeah.
It's a lot to ask of a driver.
It's and through a tunnel all the way.
Absolutely. All that transitions, the bumps, the elevation changes. You have to know every single nook and cranny of that racetrack before you can actually start to set a fast lap at Monaco. It's the toughest racetrack. Period. It's the toughest street course. It's really the toughest test in all of Formula One. People can hate on it all they want, but the fact of the matter is, it is the toughest race to drive. Now, if you want good racing at Monaco, you got to watch the feeder series. The feeder series put on good racing. We'll talk about those in a little bit. But in terms of F1, you're talking about strategy, and you are looking at just the best, the cream of the crop drivers keeping it out of the wall for 78 laps. That's impressive.
Yeah, we'll come back to this in a little bit. I think I have a little bit more to add to that. But right now, let's move to the weekend wrap-up. And Rob, since you have so much to talk about here, you always do, and that's fine. That's great. You watch this and you keep us all up to date on the news and the winners there. I'm going to let you take over and talk about and share the rest of the best here.
Yeah, so first of all, on Wednesday, we had the NASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational Series. That was at Circuit of the Americas, kind of like to wet your whistle for what was coming on the weekend. James Davison ended up winning that, just again proving how much of a disparity. Clearly, Rick Ware has some fast drivers, but he gives them terrible cars. Imagine what we could do if the playing field was as level as it is in iRacing. Am I right? ARCA Series was at Toledo. Ty Gibbs won that in a dominating fashion. Toledo, holy cow. I feel bad for all those fans who had to sit there and watch basically 14 cars putz around, and top 5 were the only guys that were on the lead lap, I think. It was a race. A race happened. A race. I mean, this is a sad thing. Is at least I do. I pay a lot of money. I pay $10 extra for Mav TV, and to watch ARCA races. And let me tell you something. Half of these are just complete garbage. ARCA. But at least Ty Gibbs won. So Ty Gibbs being Ty Gibbs continues the era of his complete babyface dominance. It's just going to keep happening.
Babyface Gibbs.
But hey, we had Formula 2. Formula 2 ran 3 races, again, because we're doing 3 races. By the way, we got another Formula 2 race at Baku in the next couple of weeks on June 6th. Super excited for that because we haven't had a Formula 2 race since Bahrain to start the season. So it has been a long time since we've seen these guys. But race 1 was won by Guan Yu Zhou. He won the race from start to finish. He had a great run there. A podium for the first time for Roy Nissany, the Israeli driver who is the son of Chanuk Nissany, easily the worst driver to ever set foot in a Formula 1 car. But hey, his son is doing a heck of a job. He got his first podium in Formula 2 this year with the Dams. Now, keep in mind, Nissany, I've watched his career for a long time, going back to about 2016, 2017, when he was racing with Pietro Fittipaldi in Formula V8 3.5 series, which was Formula Renault series. Nissany is not a bad driver, but he has made a lot of mistakes, but he's learning a lot. This year was really cool to see him pull off and grab a victory in race, no, or not a victory, a podium in race 2. Felipe Drugovich also was on the podium. He was second behind Guan Yu Zhou. But Guan Yu Zhou actually very, very methodical race. Did not have that great of a race next race. So this next race was crazy. Let me tell you what, race 2 was insane. So first of all, I want to specify this. This race kicked off at 8:20 local time. 8:20 in the morning local time. Can you believe that? Imagine racing at 8:20 in the morning around Monaco. I mean, that's one way to wake up on a Saturday morning. But actually, so it was more around 2:20 a.m. Eastern time. So it was easy for me to watch. I literally just went to bed after the race.
Didn't the truck series go practice or qualify? They qualified at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. That was an early one. But so 8:20 in the morning, and it was rainy. It was rainy. So you had a lot of interesting strategies going on. So first of all, since this was the sprint race, this was like the second sprint race, you didn't have to change tires. So as soon as it was announced as it was a wet race, everybody started on the wet tires. And about halfway through the race, it started drying. You started to get this dry line. So there was some question, can you go to slicks and make up some time? Well, race winner and podium finisher Guan Yu Zhou and Felipe Drugovich, they made the gamble. UNI Virtuosi made a gamble about midway through the race. They said, all right, we're going to come in and we're going to put both our drivers, we're going to double stack. They did not. They double stacked, which means they doubled down on the strategy. And they said, and keep in mind, Formula 2 pit stops last about as long as a NASCAR pit stop or an IndyCar pit stop. They're not as fast and as well-timed as Formula 1. They have only about like a handful of people working on the car at a pit stop. So it takes them a bit longer. So to double stack your cars in a race where you don't have a mandatory pit stop is bold. So they went for a big-time gamble, put both cars out there on slicks, on soft slicks, and it backfired so heavily that they were about 25 seconds off the pace.
Oh, wow.
They were so slow, they were getting in the way. They bailed almost immediately, but back to the slicks, to the wet tires, excuse me. Both UNI Virtuosi cars bailed back onto the wet tires. If I'm Guan Yu Zhou and if I'm Felipe Drugovich, you got to be sitting there saying, we won the last race, and now our teams just screwed both of us out of points finishes. They were running, I believe, in the points at this time, both of them. And they just got completely taken out of contention because of that one gamble. And it just didn't pay off. I mean, I understand they had to gamble for it. They felt like there was a dry line on the track. They wanted to gamble, but it did not play out. It did not pay off. I'm sorry, it just didn't pay off. And then Ryan Nissany was just hyping him up. He was running up there in the top 6 as well. He had a situation. He was battling. I mean, there was a big gaggle of cars. I mean, there was a big gaggle of cars for about, say, 5th on down. Late in the race, and Nissany was running in there, goes into Saint Devant, and he just wrecked his tires in the last lap because he was battling so hard to keep his 6th place position, and just slides into the barrier coming out of the turn, just like it was the slightest error, slightest mistake, just ran a little bit wide, but those unforgiving Monaco barriers. There's just not much you can do. You go from the highest of highs, you get your first podium of your Formula 2 career. Probably the biggest day of Roy Nissany's life, and a lot of people have said is not good enough. A lot of people say Roy is like his father. He's not fast. He's only there on money, what have you. But Roy showed his own because he bounced back in the next race and still finished in the points. So I really wanted to give that shout out. But anyway, so the race was actually won. Was actually won by a different driver than it's going to show. So Dan Ticktum is the winner. But that is because Liam Lawson's car was found to have a technical infringement on it. He was disqualified. Or not disqualified. I think he had a time penalty instead. Whatever. They penalized him for something. So Dan Ticktum actually does end up getting his win, which is huge for Ticktum because Ticktum was actually quoted as saying earlier in the week as saying, if he doesn't perform this year, this could be his last shot. And the reason why I'm bringing up both Ticktum and Nissany is they are Williams Junior drivers. And I'm saying this specifically. And there's a lot of speculation on what is Mercedes going to do next year. So here's the possibility. if Mercedes does decide to go with George Russell next year, replacing who knows, Hamilton or Bottas, who knows? If Russell gets the call, Williams is going to have 2 junior drivers in their stable that I don't know how. I don't think Dan Tickton brings a lot of money, but I know Nissan he does. I know Nissan will bring a decent amount of money. I don't know how much funding he has, but I know he's clearly got enough to keep him in F2. I know he didn't have enough funding in like 2019, but he came back last year and now this year, so it's his 3rd year. But Williams could be looking at this Monaco weekend as saying, who do we want to win? And Tickton had a good race, but in the 3rd race he made a mistake and tried to make a pass at Rascasse, and that was it. He actually stalled the car. He couldn't get the car backed up. He didn't crash. He didn't hit the wall. He was just going for a pass, and he ran out of room, and car stalled, and he just had to retire the car, even though there was no damage, no technical problems. He just couldn't get the car into reverse. So Dan Tickton ending up winning that race in race 2. But in race 3, Théo Pourchaire becomes the youngest driver in the history of Formula 2 to win a race at 17 years old. He wins from start to finish, has an excellent race, just absolutely dominating performance. So great win there by Théo Pourchaire. And then the next 2 races here, we're going to talk about the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine. Race 1 was a relatively very simple, easy race, not too much drama there. That was won by Isaac Hadjar. He was victor there. And then in race 2, we had a crazy lap 1 crash. I don't know if you've seen this, Josh, but there was a big crash on the run up the straight after the first turn, going up the hill, and a car flipped, actually, which was pretty crazy. It was a big pileup. Cars got pulled up. There was a big red flag. Race was suspended for a while, but eventually it got restarted, and the pride of Barbados, Zane Maloney, won his first ever Formula Regional European Championship race. In that race. So it's a good race. By the way, all those races are live streamed on YouTube, so you can actually set reminders for those live streams if you have one, and you can go back and watch them at any time. So they're real quick. They're only about 30 minutes long, and they're really fun. There's a lot of drivers. There's like 30. Actually, this was crazy. There were too many entrants to this race, so much so that the bottom half actually alternated. The bottom 5 alternated. So you had too many cars and not enough grid spots. Like, the cars were literally going to end up starting the race off in Rascasse, and they weren't even going to be able to see the start. So what they ended up doing was, like, the bottom half or whatever, the bottom 5 or so qualifiers ended up alternating. So, like, what did they say? Like, 2 or 3 ran race 1, and then the next 2 or 3 ran race 2. So it was really interesting way how they did that. So technically, and then speaking of Formula 2, and cars not getting to qualify, let's not forget that Alessio Deletta became one of the first drivers in Formula 2 history since, actually, Mahavir Raghunathan never actually failed to get under the 107% rule. So Alessio Deletta, congratulations. He actually was well under the 107% rule, was lapped about 19 laps about less than 20 laps into the race, which was really hard to do at Monaco. He got lapped pretty quickly there. He was very slow, very, very slow. Definitely question, and especially comparing his teammate in HWA, it was very, very much quicker than him. So yeah, fun time down there in the feeder series world. So let's move on to the outstanding performance, Josh, before I talk too much more.
Well, I'll go ahead and share mine here. Yes, the outstanding performance. I'm going to go with Sergio Perez. He hammered down when he had to. Right before he pitted, he got clear track ahead of him. He ran some really quick lap times based on the tires, and had a quick out lap, and came out 4th. He moved up like 3 positions. That's a big gain at Monaco. And what did that equate to? More points. That gives Red Bull, again, the Red Bull has 1 point championship advantage. It's 149 points to Mercedes 148. Is that going to remain that way after, 5 races from now? Probably not. Potentially, but probably not. But now they have it. They have for a little bit. They have this, we are the championship leaders. And that's why he came to Red Bull. That's why Red Bull hired him. These young drivers, as you mentioned, weren't getting the job done. Probably wouldn't have got the job done this way. In fact, I don't think they would have. I share that opinion. But Checo, He's an awesome driver, and I hope he gets his opportunity this year to shine and maybe even win a Grand Prix where he's like, I'm the better guy here today. Let me win. I'm going to, if it's got to come down to one of us two, what's the points here? Of course, Verstappen probably is going to be in the championship hunt, so I hope team orders don't come into play. But he did his job. He did what he was hired to do, and now they have the championship lead in the Constructors' Championship. Red Bull do, so that's my outstanding performance.
My outstanding performance is really easy because I already talked about these guys. First of all, new pride of Barbados, Zane Maloney. He first of all gets it. Big second place. He finished second place in the first race, and then won from the pole in race 2. And I watched him last year in Euroformula Open. He looked good, but he didn't look as good as he did this weekend. So I was really, really impressed with his progress. He's made some great progress. I don't think we've had a Barbados race driver really in major auto racing in our time. I mean, it is. I know his dad owns one of the few auto racing venues in the Caribbean, and actually, I remember that same venue hosted the Race of Champions. I think in 2014, 13 or 14. I think it hosted the Race of Champions. So it's really cool to see Zane Maloney go out there and get that victory because definitely it's cool to see him represent Barbados. Rihanna. Move aside, Rihanna. You're no longer the pride of Barbados. It's now Zane Maloney. I'm sorry, I said that on Saturday. I said if Zane Maloney wins this weekend, I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna say move over, Rihanna. We've got a new pride of Barbados. But then also I got to give a shout out to Righty Sani. Like I said, a lot of guys have written this guy off. A lot of people have written and said, does this guy belong in F2? Does he belong in F1? Does he belong out here? And I think he silenced a lot. I mean, obviously making a mistake on worn rain tires at Monaco is going to happen to even the best drivers at least once, so I don't really fault him as much for that. But I think that podium in the first race and then rebounding to score points in the feature race was really huge. So it's a big day. And he's having a career year right now with Dams. I mean, compared to last year when he was with Trident, it just looked like, I mean, Trident is behind the 8 ball and always has been behind the 8 ball. So I don't think that was helping him. But getting with a team like Dams has really helped him step up. And I think he's learning a lot and learning a lot more. So it's great to see him. And it's just great to see any driver who can silence haters. When your dad is, arguably a worse race driver than Yuji Ide or Taki Inui, it's kind of hard to be proud of that. But then it's really hard to kind of silence some of those haters. But Roy Nissany definitely went out there and did it this weekend. So I'm really happy for him. I mean, he's been a cool dude, but always hoping for him to do well. So good to see him finally get that first F2 podium, get that monkey off his back. Definitely great. Like I said, he was a good. He was a contender with Pietro Fittipaldi in the Formula V8 series back in 16-17. So this guy's no slouch. Neither is Pietro, for that matter, but he's no slouch either. So good to see him get that good. So, Josh, I think it's time for our next segment.
Yeah, let's move on to the upshift downshift segment here. For review, for those of you who may be new, maybe it's a refresher for those who are returning. Upshift downshift segment means that we're going to propose. We got 4 questions here. Some of them are hypothetical. Some of them are news related, event related, race weekend related, whatever it might be. But we got 4 questions here. If you upshift means you agree. Downshift means you disagree. You can throw it into neutral because sometimes you just don't have enough information to go off of. You're not sure. Or that's happened a handful of times over the past, approaching 90 episodes of doing this. We just don't care enough about it. I think it's only happened a few times. But let's go on. Let's start. First question here. NASCAR should implement time penalties for track limit violations that are served during pit stops. Do you upshift or downshift?
I'm going to downshift this. I don't think it's right for NASCAR to go to do that on. Okay, look, track limits is important when we're talking about corner cutting. If guys are cutting the corner, that's one thing. Or if, in the other hand, if guys make passes while on track limits violations, then I'll actually make an exception for that. But in terms of guys just, going off the track in order to get a better lap, I mean, that's how NASCAR's always been on road courses. And, road course purists are going to say they should be penalized for that. But NASCAR doesn't need to do that. I mean, they do it for like at the Charlotte Roval. They're really, really hard on it. Where like you have to stop in the middle of the track and serve your penalty or whatever, which is crazy to me. I still think if you cut the front stretch chicane at Charlotte Roval, which is I still think the craziest thing. At Watkins Glen it makes sense. You have to stop if you cut the inner loop and stuff. But here, you don't have that. You don't have like deviations from that, like chicanes that are built into the track and not like already like Coda is a track. It doesn't have a bunch like a chicane built into it, like a temporary chicane is what I'm talking about. So I don't think there's really any need to impose track limits impose track limit penalties when you don't have things like that. I think if guys are just going offline in order to make a better lap time, that's different. Because especially when lap times are 2.5 minutes long. Yeah, let's speed these lap times up. I'm not saying let them cut the corners, but if we could speed these lap times up, I think we should probably do whatever we can to get those lap times up so that it's not like watching a snail's race. It's not like watching Turbo, but at 3.5 the speed.
Well, this question was kind of intended for like when you cut the corners, like what happened to Ross Chastain in the Xfinity race. Forget who it was handed to. Austin Dillon's given to Austin Dillon in the Cup race. So, I feel like a pass-through penalty for something like that, especially if, like, you got those turtles there. And to me, like, if you're forced off, you have 3 options. You can, let's say it's a left-handed corner. You can turn right and bang into the guy next to you. If it's a restart, you could damage your car and a lot of other cars cause a wreck. Option B is to go over the turtles. Well, that's not going to end well for your radiator, okay? Your splitter, your front end is going to be demolished. So your best bet is to turn left and cut the corner. And to me, I'm kind of one of those guys that, like, if they give the position back within a reasonable amount of time, and even if they give multiple positions back, I think they should be allowed to discontinue. But if they want to be stern about it, we've seen an official before go over the wall, hand up. All right, we're going to serve a time penalty here. All right, now you can go. I think that's a little bit better and less punishing. And sometimes I feel like fits the crime better because I don't think Ross Chastain, I don't think Austin Dillon, like, we're just going to shortcut the corner here. I'm tired of following this guy in front of me. I don't think that was the case at all. So I feel like that would be a good way to go. And I feel like it more fits the crime myself. Formula One is open to making track changes to the Monaco circuit if they are the right ones. But the issue with the Monaco Grand Prix is the cars, not the racetrack. Do you upshift or downshift? We kind of already discussed this earlier.
We already discussed this. I upshift. I don't think I need to go into any further detail.
I upshift as well. And the one thing I wanted to add was the sad part is I think we're going to have to wait 5 years until something can happen because of the new car coming out next year. It's basically the same shape and size as the current F1 car. So, to me, especially after watching the Formula E race, they need to go back like, all right, here's the car we're going to have for the next 5 years. Okay, 6 years from now, in 2020, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 2027, the 2027 car is we're going to downsize. We need to get downsized again because there were some really classic Monaco races back in the 80s when these cars were significantly shorter. And if that means, I don't know what that entails. Obviously, we want these cars to be safe because some of those cars were pretty dangerous. But at the same time, if we're able to design a safe car that is smaller, we need to do it because obviously Formula E does it, right? What can we learn from that car design and implement it into F1 standards? That's what I wanted to add there. So the bad news is we got to wait a few years before it can even happen. Third question here. Ty Gibbs will win 14 of 20 races in the ARCA Menard Series, but that does not include the East and West races. So just the big ARCA Menard Series. He will win 14 of 20 races in 2021. Do you upshift or downshift?
All right, I have officially upshifted so hard that I broke the gearbox because I don't really see any other way the ARCA Series could end this year.
Yeah, I'm going to upshift 2 so much that my crew member just jumped in and gave me a wrench to shift for the rest of the race. It is broken as well. The transmission need to be replaced. The drive shaft will also need to be replaced because I was just at such a force. So yeah,
There's literally no other way to put it. I mean, this dude is
on fire.
At the top of his game. He's just it's either he's better than everybody else, or he's got a better car than everybody else, or it's a little bit of both. And I think it's a little bit of both.
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, Corey Heim will probably win another race or two.
He's better than the Venturini cars. Yeah, I mean, by a long shot. I mean,
I won't discount Gracie Trotter maybe getting a victory. If
Trotter really needs to get better.
But anybody else in that series, in the big ARCA series, I just don't see happening. So yeah, 14 of 20 is certainly possible. All right, last one here, Rob. I'm sure this one. I'm sure you read this article. I'm sure you saw it. And if you didn't, he's rolling his eyes like, yes, I saw it. I read it. Oh my gosh. All right. IMS president, Indianapolis Motor Speedway president Doug Boles was asked by Racer if a second race on the Indianapolis Oval would be an option to boost the number of IndyCar oval races. Do you upshift or downshift that a second oval race at Indianapolis should be added to the IndyCar calendar? I'm not even going to go ahead and go first here because I'm just going to, or should I go first? I don't know.
It's up to you. I just get a headache hearing this.
Well, I'll go first. Obviously, it's downshift. All right, you should only be one race on the Indianapolis Oval. All right, it's the same. It's different, but it's the same. You know, when NASCAR added the Xfinity series or Indianapolis to the Xfinity series schedule after we replaced it with IRP, it diminished what it meant to win the Brickyard 400 because, you know, no longer did you have to make your way into the field of the greatest stock car drivers in the world to race in Indianapolis. All right. Adding a second race at Indianapolis isn't going to draw 33 cars. All right. You know, it's going to be the whatever mile race. And it will diminish what it means to win an IndyCar race on the Oval at Indianapolis. Plain and simple. I love Doug Boles just being honest about that. I like how he says, he said, this isn't the right wordage or the exact quote, but he said, like, while I'm concerned, you know, that the number of ovals are decreasing, the solution to that is not adding a second race in Indianapolis. And, you know, Doug Boles, I love you. You're awesome promoter, president of the track. So thank you for just being quite blunt with that. But yeah, I downshift this idea wholeheartedly. Again, I think kind of goes back to at least the second, third, and fourth here. I'm breaking the transmission in the gearbox with my shifting here.
I'm gonna have to say downshift as well, and it's really no question why. It's a ridiculous question. Look, do you really think you're going to get people to show up to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for another oval race that's not special at all, that won't have 33 cars, and that will probably take place in a time of the year that nobody really wants to go to IMS? No, this is ridiculous. If anything, that's not what IMS should be focused on. IMS right now should be focused on getting Formula One back and getting some kind of sports car weekend back that's not Super Trofeo racing or North American Lamborghini racing, whatever. You know, I don't care as much about that. People would really, if you want people to come out, you got to get F1 back, or at the very least, IMSA's got to come back. Now, that being said, I think the Penske should be making it his absolute goal, as should promoters, as working with these places and saying, what can we do to get more people to come out to oval races? You know, if that means do some kind of deal where, hey, if you have an Indy 500 ticket, you can get a ticket to Michigan or Kentucky for half off. You know, get people that way. You know, then that'd be like, oh, well, I really like the racing in Indianapolis. I might take a trip to down to Kentucky. Let's be honest. Kentucky Speedway is like, what, 2.5 hours from Indianapolis Motor Speedway? Give or take 2.5 hours?
Probably closer to 3 hours.
It's still not bad. It's still like a day trip.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm saying it's still a day trip. You know, if you said, okay, you went to the 500, okay, well, if you show your proof of purchase of the ticket, then you can get half off for, your ticket. You could get your ticket wherever you want to go to Kentucky, get that for half off. Do something like that. The promoters have to be willing to take chances to put butts in seats at oval racing. And there's a lot of oval tracks right now that I am certain can produce good races for IndyCar. Michigan, Kentucky, and Chicagoland, all around the Indiana area, all would work with that kind of like deal. Like, say, hey, did you go to the Indy 500 this year? Do you want to see another IndyCar race that's close to your home? Here, this is how you can do it. Something like that. You don't want to put another oval race on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. First of all, you got to get NASCAR back in the oval. Let's do that first and foremost. If there's any second oval race that needs to take place, it's got to be the Brickyard, because I'm sorry, the Brickyard this year is not special. It's not special to anybody. Nobody cares. I'm sorry. Whoever wins this Brickyard this year is not going to go down in history as a Brickyard winner. They're going to go down in history as a road course winner, and they're going to have about as much importance as every Grand Prix winner does, which is not much. Nobody remembers the Grand Prix winners. As cool as the Grand Prix is, and as fun as it is, nobody remembers them. I mean, we remember we remember our times there, and we remember the good times that fans have and everything. But let's be honest, nobody remembers the races. The races are not memorable because you're oversaturating the market already, especially when you have another race later this year that's going to be in conjunction with NASCAR, that's going to put IndyCars back on the road course again. You already have an oversaturation of IndyCar at IMS. There's no reason to have enough to oversaturate that further. Now you tell me 2 oval races, 2 road course races? That is ridiculous. There's no reason for that. And if IndyCar is really serious about going to more ovals, they'll have to think outside the box like that. I'm not saying that my idea of offering discounts to Indy 500 ticket holders is a good one. It might be a terrible idea. It might lose a ton of money. I don't know. I'm saying think outside the box like that in order to get more people to come to oval races. Because I guarantee you, this version of IndyCar can put on good. I mean, Pocono didn't have a problem generating a crowd. Pocono had really good crowds. It's just the drivers were too much of pansies and scaredy cats to race safely there. You can't go too wide into the tunnel turn, guys, on lap 1. Stop trying. You could put on a good race there. And they have put on good races at Pocono, and they will put on good races at other oval races. We just have to give them a chance. And fans have to give them a chance, and we have to incentivize fans to give them a chance. And that's why I'm saying, think outside the box. That's the way to do it.
All right. Well, with that being said, that's the end of Upshift, Downshift. And now we're going to transition into, it's typically a history segment, but more it's going to be not a history segment. It might become history. I don't know. We'll see.
We're being a little, we're going off the beaten path here.
Yeah.
We're creating some controversy. Here because I know what I'm going to say here is going to be controversial. I promise you that.
Well, Rob, if I may spoil it, can I spoil it for others, or should you just take over now?
Go ahead and spoil it right now. Go ahead and spoil it right now, and then I'll go into it.
Okay, Rob is going to predict the 2021, the 105th Indianapolis 500 winner.
I did not come up with this decision lightly. This week, in honor of the Indianapolis 500 being run on Sunday, I'm going to deviate from the norm and pick the winner of the race. But I'm going to explain why I picked this person, and I hope by the end of it, you either agree or can see why I picked this person, even if you don't agree. Picking a winner is always difficult. It's cliche. Everybody's like, everybody asks, before the Kentucky Derby, oh, who's your horse? Who's your horse? Before the Indy 500, oh, who's your pick? Who's your pick? Who do you think's going to win? All right, I'm going to avoid all of that, and I'm going to explain it here. But now, obviously, keep in mind, I usually don't make my pick until I see Carb Day, because Carb Day is usually the best indicator of what these drivers have and where they're probably going to run throughout the day. Because that's when their race setups are going to be dialed in, and that's when drivers are going to run in packs. And you're really going to be able to see how their cars perform in big packs, in racing conditions. It's going to be at around 11 a.m., which is right around when the race is going to be starting. I think it's going to be an extra hour this year because there's no Freedom 100 or pit stop competition. So I believe that's an extra hour, which should probably tell a lot more. Going to have a lot more drivers probably making runs than you'd see normally. So it's going to be I'm going to have a better idea of whether or not I do truly believe this by Friday. But right now, this is who I think is going to win. And like I said, there's a lot of variables in the Indianapolis 500 that could throw off any strategy or affect a way how a driver can perform. So this is why my way of saying I'm not guaranteeing anything. If this person wins, great. If this person is in contention but doesn't win, you'll see probably why I thought this was going to happen. I've typically had a fairly decent track record of picking who's going to run up front or who's going to possibly win. I haven't usually been on point, but I can usually have a gut feeling and back up my gut feeling with the reason. So I'm not going to delay it anymore. Without further ado, my pick to win the 105th Indianapolis 500 is Colton Herta. And why have I picked Colton Herta for this victory? Well, I'm going to explain. Herta's qualified T2, and he has been consistently fast all week. He's usually been in the top 20 in speeds every single day. I think there's only been one day, if that, where he wasn't in the top 20 in speeds. Herta's fast. Herta is a race winner this year. He's on a roll. He had a fairly decent run in the Grand Prix. He's had a really good month of May so far. He's got some momentum. That helps. Having a little bit of momentum is always going to help. Having a fast car is going to help too. But notice I didn't pick the pole sitter. Notice I didn't pick anybody behind him. You know, there's plenty of drivers who come from the first 3 rows that can win. There's plenty of drivers who come from the last, 7 rows. 8 rows. You know, anybody can win this race. It's a toss-up. So it's hard to pick. But again, I'm walking you through why I've picked Colton Herta. Honda engines appear to have the advantage this year. I do not believe a Chevrolet engine will win this race. Ed Carpenter and Rinus VeeKay qualified really well, but outside of them, Chevrolet struggled. Chevrolets struggled. And Chevys are not fast. Chevys do not have the horsepower that they need this year. And that happens, you know, sometimes the Chevys do have the horsepower, sometimes the Hondas don't. It seems to alternate almost every year. This year, the Hondas have the power, and Chevrolets are behind the 8 ball. So that's why it's really hard for me to really believe that Carpenter or VeeKay, or even Connor Daly for that matter, have a legitimate shot at victory. I'm not saying they won't run up front, but I just don't think it can outrun a Honda engine. I think that Honda engine is going to have that little bit of edge. So it's going to be a driver in a Honda engine. Well, Herta has a Honda engine. And now, while Dixon might be a safe pick, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, but Dixon's been at top of the charts almost every week. And the Ganassi had all 4 cars in the top 9. How can you not go with the Ganassi car? Dixon's been snake-bitten in Indy. And I'm going based off history. I'm sorry. But Dixon, outside of 2008, every year, no matter how fast Dixon is, something goes wrong for him. He has something go wrong. Even last year, when it was probably an easy chance that he would win, I think most people had a very legitimate say, oh, Dixon's going to get his second 500 this year. But it was Sato who got his second 500. And why did Sato get his second 500? Honda engine, all that stuff, fast all week. You know, he had something to prove. He was kind of laying low under the radar. Not many people picking him. He comes out of the woodworks, beats Dixon, wins the second Indy 500. It's not impossible. It's not impossible for Dixon to win, and it's probably a bad idea to bet against Dixon. But given his history in the 500, it's like picking Michael Andretti or Mario Andretti or even Marco. Yeah, of course, they're favorites to win the race, but will they? They'll run up front, they'll lead a bunch of laps, they'll probably lead the most laps, but will they win? Will they seal the deal right when the laps wind down? Right when you get into that 50 to go, is Scott Dixon going to be up at the front? I don't think he's going to be leading. I think he's going to be up there, but I think there's going to be a couple of cars that are going to be faster than him. Not to say that Dixon's car isn't extremely fast. I might be wrong, and he might dominate the race. I don't know. But given his performance in history in Indianapolis, it's tough to say. And also given Ganassi's recent history, when was the last time a Ganassi car won at Indianapolis? Franchitti in 2012, I think. Yeah, it's been quite a while. It's been almost a full decade since the Ganassi car has gone to victory lane. Not saying they don't have a fast lineup, but Palou's not Palou's just in his second year. He crashed in qualifying. I don't think he's there yet. Ericsson's fast. Don't count him out, but I just am not sure if he gets Indy yet. That's not an insult to Ericsson. I think Ericsson is a great driver, but I'm just not so sure he's ready to win in Indianapolis yet. And then, of course, you have Kanaan. Kanaan has been fast. Kanaan is a winner. It's probably wrong to pick Kanaan, but Kanaan's not full-time anymore. And that is, I think, going to be the biggest problem and biggest issue for Kanaan is staying. Not saying that he's not fit, not saying that he couldn't do it, but I think the biggest issue for Kanaan is going to be going through that whole 500 miles after having not done so full-time in a while. Not saying he can't do it, just saying I think it's going to be tough. Again, all of this goes back to Herta. His Andretti teammates have struggled. Hinchcliffe's not fast. Rossi's not fast. Rossi's 10th fast, not saying he's slow, but he's not as fast as Herta. Hunter Ray got into the Fast 9, but was kind of an also ran up in that Fast 9. Didn't really do much. Hunter Ray could win, but given his season, I don't really like his chances either. And I'm not picking a Penske car, because Penske cars are missing something. Not saying they can't lead laps and pull up through the field, but there's just no way it's going to happen here. And Andretti routinely brings their best cars to Indianapolis. No matter how much they struggle the rest of the year, the Indy Oval will always have at least two Andretti cars in contention to win. And I think it's going to be Rossi and Herta, and I think Herta is going to get that victory. Herta is a former Freedom 100 winner. And I talked about this last year. I said, there has never been a Freedom 100 winner to win the Indy 500. The only two drivers in the field today that could legitimately do that are Herta and Newgarden. Well, Newgarden's in a Chevy, and Newgarden's mired back mid-pack. It's going to take some excellent driving and excellent pit strategy for Newgarden to be in contention to win this race. And he's going to have to find at least 2 miles an hour in order to really be in contention. I have a hard time believing Newgarden will be that Freedom 100 winner. Herta's got the speed. Herta's got the knowledge. Herta's got the know-how. And it might seem hypocritical because last week I doubted that Andretti cars would have much success in the points, but I believe Josh and we both pointed to Herta as being the lone bright spot for Andretti Autosport this season. He does have that win at St. Petersburg.
Yep.
Usually St. Petersburg is a pretty good place to test where you are on the season. Good run at St. Petersburg. We've seen what Herta can do when he starts up front. He can win races. I really don't see why this would be any different. And again, he finished 8th last year. First year that he ran in 2019, he had that engine expire. Kind of write that off, but he was really fast through the entirety of the month. People were pegging him good. Had an engine expire. If his engine does not expire this year, and with the car that he has, good pit strategy from his dad, Brian, who I think is his strategist, if he's not still... Okay, because I thought Marco was working with Michael, so I assume... And you know what? When I say that, Brian Herta...
He's really good. He's won too.
Hey, man. 2016, 2011. Yep. Who was calling the shots on those races? Brian Herta was.
Yeah.
Brian Herta is going to call the shots on his son's car. Weldon had a fast car that day. Rossi had a fast car that day. Both of them had enough fuel to make it to the end, thanks to Herta's incredible pit strategy. If it's a fuel mileage race, I really like Colton Herta's chances at that point, because then I really think if he can... Now, it's going to be tough to save fuel compared to Dixon. Don't get me wrong. Dixon's probably going to have a better shot saving fuel than that, but I think Herta's going to be faster than Dixon. I think Andretti's going to prepare those cars to be just as fast, if not faster, than those Ganassi cars. They got the same Honda engine in it. It's going to be down to driver talent, and I think Herta... No matter, not taking anything away from Dixon. Dixon's a great driver. He might not even be in contention of the race, but I really think this is the year that we see Colton Herta bring an American back to victory lane in the Indianapolis 500. And for the first time since Hunter Ray in 2014, we would have an American win. Again, all of this is going to probably change by Carb Day.
Rossi won in 16.
Rossi ran in 16, you're right, I'm sorry. That was Rossi. So his teammate. But again... That's even better. That's a good, better point. Thanks for reminding me of that, Josh. I don't know why I forgot it because I literally just brought it up like in the last couple of seconds. But that's actually a good point because the last few Andretti winners, well, sans Sato in 2017, have been American drivers. So you got Rossi, you got Hunter Ray, 16 and 14. I mean, I know Sato, but hey, again, I feel like this is Colton Herta's year to get the 500 done. Now, if you agree with me, I really encourage you to let me know what you think. Use the hashtag Robin Roller. Tweet me at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS 33. I want to hear what you think. I want to hear your picks. And I want to hear if you think that my reasoning behind picking Colton Herta is correct. If you think I'm completely wrong, if you think that I am a fool for discounting Dixon, or I am a fool for discounting Kanaan, or I am a fool for discounting any Penske car, you tell me. I want to hear, because I want to know where you came to that conclusion. Because in my conclusions, I don't think any of those guys have a shot this year. I think Herta's got the best shot. And behind Herta, I think it's got to be, if I had to pick a second driver, a driver who's going to finish second, I'm going to have to pick Elio Castroneves. You never count out Elio at Indianapolis. And even though he hasn't run full-time this year, he was fast in qualifying, he was fast in practice, he was fast in the test. He looks like he has not lost a beat. Michael Shank Racing has been on it with Harvey at Indianapolis. No reason to count out Elio. But again, Elio is getting up there in age. And I think Herta might have the advantage when it comes to age. Might not be fair. I always type up Elio. Elio did make the Fast 9. Let's not forget that. Elio is starting in the first 3 rows. It's entirely possible for Elio to pull this off and get his 4th Indianapolis 500. But I am thinking realistic. That's what I want to have happen, is Elio winning. But what I think will happen is Herta winning.
Well, Rob, I see where you're coming from. I can't disagree with you. I think Herta is definitely going to be a favorite to win this race. I think I agree. He's been top. I can't find anything wrong with your argument. Let's put it that way. Again, very difficult to predict, even after Carb Day, who's going to win this race, because so many things can happen. But I like it. Very cool way to end this podcast. So good job there. Colton Herta, Rob's prediction to win the 105th Indianapolis 500. So, what's in the windshield? Formula One is off this weekend, but they return to the streets of Baku on June 6th.
It's Baku. You keep saying
I keep saying Baku. It's Baku. Thank you. Baku. June 6th. Baku.
Azerbaijan.
That's
harder to say.
I know Azerbaijan. I can say that, but I don't know why I got referred to this city. Azerbaijan. They returned to the streets of Azerbaijan somewhere. Azerbaijan.
Baku, Azerbaijan.
All right, well, that's going to be a fun race because Red Bull is going to, I'm sure, give Mercedes another run for their money there.
And Baku always has exciting races. So if you thought Monaco was a dud, I can't wait for Baku.
It was 2016 was the first year they had races, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. 2016? Always been good.
Never forget that time Bottas stole that second place from Lance Stroll at the line.
That's true.
Never forget. And that was Stroll's first podium and Williams' last podium, too.
Yeah, it's been a while. Woo. All right, so round 5 and races 12 through 15. Is that right? 13 through 15. I think it's 13 through 15. For the supercars, takes place on May 29th and 30th at Winton Motor Raceway. So Rob, I'm sure, will try to watch those. He will try.
Well, let's see. What time are they? Let's see here. 29th to 30th. All right, so it's going to be tough because I'm probably going to try and sleep most of Saturday before the race.
Yeah. It's a long race day. Yeah,
but yeah, and I don't think, because I am credentialed, that I know we're waiting till the very end, but I don't think, like usual, we're gonna have a police escort. So what I'm probably gonna end up doing is just get there when the cannon sounds. Like my old editor at the Hendricks County Flyer, Dylan Trimpe, used to get there literally when the cannon sounded, and pretty much be there from sun up to sundown. Yeah. I might end up doing that this year because I'm not going to deal with race day traffic, dude. I'm not.
Don't blame you.
So what I'll probably do is, while I'm waiting for something to happen during that lull time before the sun comes up, what I'll probably do is just catch up on the supercars races that way.
There you go. All right, then at Charlotte Motor Speedway, the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series races on Friday, May 28th. Then on Saturday, May 29th, the Xfinity Series and ARC Menard Series will race. And then Race Miss, albeit without Monaco, is on Sunday, May 30th, the 105th running of the Indianapolis 500, beginning with coverage at 11 a.m. on NBC. Then the Coca-Cola 600, which I will be at. I won't be credentialed, but I am going there as a fan. I'm super excited to be going to my first Coca-Cola 600.
I'm excited for you, man. I think that's going to probably be more fun for you than I'm going to have. Just because the Coke 600 is always a big party, especially a night race down there in Charlotte. That's something I'd always like to see. I could never do it because I could never miss the 500. But if I was ever in your situation where I lived in Charlotte, I would be a fool not to get tickets to the 600 if I could.
Yeah, I'm super excited that they. Well, I mean, I think we're going to get tickets no matter what. But yeah, I'm going down with a friend I interned with, Brian. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to be in turn 1, down towards turn 1 a little bit. He sent me actually pictures, like where it's at, so it's pretty cool. That race begins, the Coca-Cola 600 begins at 6 p.m. on Fox. So I'm going to be able to watch the beginning of the Indianapolis 500 at least. I'm not sure when we will leave to go out that way, because he wants to go through the tents that are hopefully going to be up, where we can maybe find some cool treasures.
You should be fine, because the race will probably be over by 3 or 4. So by the time you leave to go to the track, I would assume that the race would be over.
We would hope, but we also don't want to worry about the traffic being there.
Right. I mean, you could listen to the race on the radio if you had to, right?
Yeah, definitely. So that will be. It's going to be a fun day. It's a day we look forward to every year, and hopefully in 2022, Monaco is back on Racemas. So with that though, it's time to say goodbye for this week. Thanks again for tuning in. You're new. We're glad you're listening and hope you come back for more. If you're returning, hey, thanks for your continued support. Our socials, Rob on Twitter is at RPEETERS33, and I am at roller_01, ROLLER_01. The show is at Robin Roller on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can find us on YouTube. Also, just for Racing with Robin Roller, and you'll find us right there. So, hey, let us know. Play along with the upshift, downshift. Let us know your favorite livery, your featured livery from the 2001 Formula One season. And we'll see you next week. We're talking about the 500 and the 600 and the other races that went down as well. So, for Rob Peeters, I am Josh Roller, and this was the Racing with Robin Roller podcast. Have a great Racemas, everybody.